DeepSeek perspective, that's just the first sign where Apple, look, it's just a matter of time till they're going to launch their partner in China, whether it's Baidu, Tencent, or ByteDance.
So that they can AI enable the phones.
They're going to AI enable the phones.
That's like that's a Chinese requirement.
A Chinese requirement as a partner. And then eventually, whether it's iPhone 17 or you're going to have different hardware requirements that they're ultimately going to build. So it goes back to like, you could be wrong on a quarter in Apple. And it goes back to my view.
Yeah.
New York City cab driver, the Uber driver is bearish on Apple. And as I've always said, like bears, they've hated for the last $2.5 trillion market cap.
But you think that's why it was rallying this week, because people are saying, you know what? I don't care who wins. It's all running through Apple.
That's
okay. I'd buy that.
And that's 100%. And now when it comes down to it, it's like you're starting to realize more and more like, okay, if I'm betting on AI, if you think about like our way that we played AI, late 2022, no matter who we meet.
Dan Ives emphasizes Apple's strategic focus on integrating AI into its ecosystem, including inevitable partnerships in China to meet regulatory requirements and enable AI on iPhones. He underscores Apple's central role in technological advancements, benefiting regardless of specific market winners. Ives also highlights the rapid growth of AI-driven business models, such as Microsoft's success with Copilot and the rising demand for cloud services and data centers. He sees this as a bullish signal for companies driving AI infrastructure and software innovation. Finally, Ives touches on global AI competition, noting China's progress with cost-efficient models like DeepSeek. He stresses the urgency for U.S. tech giants to innovate, as staying ahead in AI is crucial to their long-term success.
Literally, Nvidia, Microsoft, and like Penn State. Like those are the three things that no matter what investor I talk to. Then 2023, Then 2023, as you start get later into it, then it's like, okay, now you got to play rest of the hyperscalers. It's not just about Nvidia and Microsoft.
Yeah, Oracle.
That's where, and then the Messi of AI, Palantir. That's where that thing went from bar mitzvah to senior citizen in the course of 1 year, 13 to 80. So the point is, it was all then sort of, now it's building who are the second, third, fourth derivatives. Now, that's where Oracle, ServiceNow,
Dude, you
Mongo.
See IBM recently?
No, but IBM is another good example of like IBM, Oracle. They're going to continue to be huge players in AI because of that ecosystem.
Yeah.
So I just view it as much as everyone can focus on DeepSeek and like what this ultimately means, I view it as bullish for software, for infrastructure, and actually accelerating the AI revolution.
Can we run through some charts with you?
Dan, you might be right in the story and how this plays out, but the problem or the potential problem is that investors have very high expectations for these names. And we saw it with Microsoft, blowout numbers, stocks getting hit. So for the Mag 7, expected earnings growth year over year for the fourth quarter is 21.7%. I mean, these are big boy numbers.
Yep. No, but look, my view is
double the expectation for the rest of the market.
But I actually think that the street's underestimating where numbers go over the next 2-3 years. And that's sort of been our view, is that to sit here and microanalyze Microsoft, even though AI revenue beat by $1 billion.
By the way, $13 billion. That's a lot of revenue. What's the source of that?
13
How much is that, like Copilot?
It's Copilot, and it's basically what's really the use case
business
is now.
That came out of nowhere.
Think about a year ago, that's $2 billion.
Yeah.
And that is the top of the first inning.
And it's top of the first. So, but let's just take Microsoft as a good example. Non-AI revenue is weak. Essentially,
chart on John Microsoft.
Essentially, non-AI revenue.
It's this Q4 earnings.
So you're seeing that disrupted in terms of this past quarter. All I care about on Microsoft is purely what the AI story is going, what ultimately does that mean for this model, when does 13 billion become 25, 30 billion, and I could argue that starts to accelerate at a pace where instead of Azure numbers being 31%, you're now going to be at points where Azure is going to be growing 40, 45.
You think it's going to re-accelerate?
Because what's gonna happen is that now you only have 45% of workloads that are in the cloud today. As more of these use cases build out, there's going to be this is why there's more data centers under construction than active data centers, because you're going to need to put everything on the cloud.
Zook said what they're building would be the size of Manhattan.
essentially.
What even is that?
But it goes back to, like, you're going to have data center. Look, when we think about
Wait, there are more data centers under construction now than there are
active
working
data centers,
Why is that bullish for the companies that are building them?
because
That sounds not bullish.
it's bullish because it shows how much capacity
The
is
demand-
ultimately
the
with the
demand.
demand.
Okay.
And bottom line is, if tech companies are spending $400 billion in AI capex, I feel pretty comfortable that Sundar, Musk, Zuck, Cook, and so they know exactly where they're going in terms of skating where the puck's going. And they don't want to be on the outside looking in.
I think it's existential for some of them, where it would be riskier to not bet big.
100%.
I think of Alphabet in that category. If like search gets annihilated by all these AI queries that people are doing instead, and people look at him and say, "Why didn't you spend more?" Like it's game over.
The biggest
if they miss
regret
it.
within Redmond, within their history, if you ask anyone there that's been on that campus, is when they were under DOJ investigation, antitrust, late 90s, 2000, they put the brakes on, didn't invest, never really focused on mobile, eventually where social, where everything went, and they basically missed out on that whole trend for 15 years, till Nadella got there in 2014.
Yeah.
So the point is, like, our view is like where everything is going today. The reason we think tech stocks are going to be up another 25% this year, and you're going to see massive M&A, and I think Mag 7, despite expectations being high, are going to continue to massively outperform, because now investors are starting to recognize where this is going. We're going to have 20% of vehicles that are autonomous at the end of the decade.
Yeah.
Robotics, we believe 1 out of every 8 to 10 households is going to have a robot.
What exactly DeepSeek is and why there's so much talk about it today. So first of all, it is a Chinese AI startup that was actually funded by a hedge fund, sort of as a side project, began in 2023. And then why is it causing so much attention now? Well, it introduced its new R1 model last Monday, a week ago today. There was some momentum building last week, and then it sort of exploded over the weekend and into today. It develops these open source large language models, and open source is important. That is different than some of the models that are out there. And it also says that its R1 rivals OpenAI's model O1. So this is something that people have tried it out and said it is pretty successful. It does have some blind spots, including those that have to do with the Chinese Communist Party. People have used this model, have said it will not answer questions. It either will demur or give answers that are not in line with reality. Whatever the case, since it is open source, there is talk that that can potentially be tweaked by those who are using it for their own purposes, but that remains to be seen. The big thing here, as Josh alluded to, it says it is training this latest model cost $5.6 million, million with an M, not billion with a B. And that is the real revolution here, as we've been talking about, is that because of export controls, it apparently did this without Nvidia's most advanced and most expensive chips in a much more cost-effective and efficient way. Now, again, these claims have not been verified independently, and there is a lot of chatter, which we're going to talk more about whether they really did this, whether they somehow got some of those Nvidia chips through a back door, and that's how they developed the model. So that's what's at stake here. Now, a lot of people have been downloading this thing over the past week or so as it has gained prominence. It was number one on the App Store. I think it still is at this point. So a lot of people are interested in this model, and it had some outages. DeepSeek actually said it was because of attacks, not because of the flood of people using it, and it didn't have the capacity. It says, and again, we haven't independently verified this, but it says due to large-scale malicious attacks on DeepSeek services, we are temporarily limiting registrations to ensure continued service. And indeed, it was limiting those registrations to people with a Chinese mobile number because there was such an increase in interest from outside the United States. And speaking of the United States, obviously there's also a geopolitical element here about competitiveness. We restricted these chips to China, and now China has come up with this large language model that is, at least on first glance, comparable with the ones that are happening here in the US. So what's the Reaction to that? Well, David Sachs is the cyber and AI czar that was appointed from the White House, and he says it shows that the AI race will be very competitive and that President Trump was right to rescind the Biden executive order, which he says hamstrung American AI companies without asking whether China would do the same. Obviously not. He says, I'm confident in the U.S., but we can't be complacent. So we'll see if there's any kind of action that comes or if it's more just a matter of not regulating this industry to try to foster innovation. Josh?
Apple's strategy to integrate AI through partnerships in China highlights its commitment to staying ahead in global tech innovation. At the same time, Microsoft and other leaders like Oracle and IBM are driving AI transformation with massive investments in cloud infrastructure and data centers. These developments signify a bullish outlook for AI, as companies race to meet growing demand and push boundaries in automation, cloud adoption, and AI use cases. The emergence of DeepSeek, a Chinese AI startup, adds competitive pressure with its cost-efficient language model developed without Nvidia's advanced chip. This raises concerns about global AI competitiveness and the effectiveness of export restrictions. As the AI landscape evolves, the focus remains on balancing innovation with regulatory policies to maintain leadership in the field. Will DeepSeek's advancements challenge U.S. dominance in AI development? How can companies balance innovation and compliance in the AI race?